Alright, today we have a 2005 Subaru Outback that we're going to be doing a timing belt water pump job on. Radiator hoses, etc. We have a Gates kit, marked belt. Gates or ASIN or OEM are the only ones I recommend. Always get the full kit. I've had many of these fail and bend valves on one side of the motor because of it. We're going to get our coolant fans out of the way. Just a couple 10s up top. Get the coolant bottle out of the way, it just pops right out. Get these belts off. Loosen that 12 there. Run that nut up. Loosen the 12 here. Run that up. That'll loosen those belts for you. Get those off. We'll get this whole bracket out of the way. And then I will come back. Alright, got all our fans out of the way, got our hood latch catch here out of the way, belts are off, the bracket's off. Next is this pulley, which we bought this tool on Amazon. I think it was maybe 45 bucks. Just has some bolts that thread in. There is an adapter for the other style. I probably would recommend replacing these bolts with some grade 8 bolts for some extra tight ones. I happen to know that I put this pulley on last and it shouldn't be all that tight. It's going to be tight, but get your 22 in there. I'll try to do this with one hand. I kind of just put that up against my body there and use that. But got that loose. Can pop this baby out of here. Give it a little rock while it's on, still halfway out. It'll loosen that pulley up for you a little bit. And you can thread that bolt out. We'll get that off. And we will get our timing belt cover off. I'll be back. Alright, we got our timing cover off. Took our lower coolant radiator hose off. Also unbolted the coolant hose that goes to the thermostat housing water pump, because we're going to be replacing the water pump. I like to throw the crank bolt back in with a spacer. That's actually a wheel stud installer that works good, so I can spin the crank over and line up those two marks here and there. Make sure that mark here lines up with that notch. And the same on this side, that notch here, with the notch in the motor for the cam carrier and head. So we know the motor was in time, and we're going to make sure we put it back in time. I'll see if I can show you how I put the pin back in this tensioner. This way we don't just pull this out and ruin these threads, because there's all that tension on the belt pushing on these threads right now. If you try to back this out, there's a chance you can rip the threads out of that bolt hole. And then you got to repair them, and that's more work that you don't get paid for. So let's get that pinned up and get everything off. Don't know if I can do this one-handed. I like to stick a pry bar between the water pump and the tensioner pulley on the belt. We're replacing everything, so it's not bad for anything. I do have an extra pin because I've done these a million times. I did work at a Subaru dealership. There's a hole right here. You can stick this in, it almost lines up. Just give your pry bar nice, slow, even pressure. Sometimes you gotta work it back and forth a little bit. And get that pin in there so that it holds your tensioner up a little. Now our belt isn't so tight on there. I might be able to prop this up for you guys. There you go. I usually start with the least amount of tension hold up, holding pressure on the pulley. Take that out. Let's take that one out. This should be our next least tension. See how it didn't jump up? Because there was no tension on it. Now, I did drop this washer down in there. The new pulley tensioner should come with that. But I always save them. And that's it. We can snake our belt off of here and throw it in the trash. Let's get these other pulleys off. These bolts do not need to be super tight. It is an aluminum block. You will strip the threads if you try to over tighten them. So now I'm going to take my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 water pump bolts out. We'll get that off and clean everything up and get ready for install. And I will show you how I do that the easiest way that I've seen for a Subaru. Alright, everything's off. Just wanted to show you guys a couple things. One, you will have coolant come out of your water pump even though you drain the coolant. I like to wire wheel my surfaces because I like very clean surfaces. I do use a brass soft wire wheel to do so. And then swap over the thermostat. We got a new one here. This little pin, the jiggle pin, that needs to be facing the front because that's going to be the highest point on the vehicle, on the engine of the coolant system, down low. So we want that there so that air can escape through there. It is kind of funky shaped, so it is important. And then we'll pop our housing back on, making sure it's facing the same direction. It did have a paper gasket. That was the other thing. I had to scrape off a paper gasket. They come with metal gaskets. Subaru is metal, Gates are metal, and the Acing kit is metal. If your kit does not have a metal gasket, throw it in the garbage. Go get a Gates, Acing, or an OEM Subaru kit with the proper gasket. You don't need any RTV on this. Some people use it to hold it in place. I don't. So we're going to get this bolted on, and then I will show you my timing belt trick. Alright, hopefully you guys can see while I'm working. I'm going to show you how I put these belts on with the least amount of struggle. This you can tighten up your tensioner. The lower pulley I leave loose so that it has some room to play. Start with the dotted line with the arrows pointing toward the driver's side. That's going to go onto your crank, and you're going to go underneath your tensioner pulley. And you're going to want to pull up on that tensioner and drop it right onto your right side bank. That hopefully hasn't moved because it is under a loaded tension. And you're going to wrap it around your water pump and lock it into place with your idler. You can let go from there. Make sure your marks are on. I know mine are. And then come around. I just hold my thumb there so that it doesn't move. We're going to wrap this pulley on. You can move this left side a little bit. So we'll angle it down a little and line our mark up. And then we'll take our thumb and we'll pull it down so that it's nice and even with our mark. I'm going to take my black pulley without the spacer on the back, use a socket, putting tension on the belt with the pulley. You're going to line your bolt up, hold tension, and thread your bolt in. If it fights you, you are not lined up. And don't force it. Holding tension on the belt. That pulley's on. Now we take our orange pulley with the rib on the back. And feed it up under the belt. And again, line up the bolt hole, putting tension on the belt with the pulley. We thread it on by hand. And once again, if it is fighting you, it is not going in. And you should be able to finger tight that pulley. And then now we can tighten up our pulleys. Alright, we got all our pulley bolts tightened up. You can see we are on our mark there. We are on our mark there. It's hard to see, but it is. And we are on our mark there. I like to spin the motor around 2 full revolutions of the crank. Will bring the cams back into place. So we're going to pull our pin and we're going to spin it around by hand, 2 full crank revolutions. This will allow the belt to sit exactly where it wants to be on the pulleys, and it'll tell us that we are 100% lined up with our belt. Now the belt marks will not line up, but that's not what we're looking at. That's just for installation. We want to see our marks on the bolts. So that's lined up. That's lined up. And that's lined up. So now I know 100% that belt is on correct. And I didn't have to fight it. Hope this helps you guys. I'm going to throw it all back together and get this baby running.